Ja, ok. Ja, nei, for jeg skulle hatt en USB-C PC-lager oppe i Akershus eller Vestfold, kall det hva du vil. Ja. Jeg prøvde å ringe Easy også, nemlig. Greit, takk, ha det. Yeah, I will fix so it's coming on the screen there too.
Okay, thank you. Anyone with online thing? No. Yeah, the online is just.
La vecchia lo ritenete. Derfor de ikke har registrert at den er koblet til den.
Ja, fordi at det funket på hva tenker du på?
Sorry for that. I'm just doing this scenario now, so that's why I'm section.
Your PC can project. Right, I don't know.
Thank you. All right.
There you go, guys. So hopefully we'll be able to connect with our online participants in about 2 minutes. But I'd just like to welcome you
Ja,
to
med
the
Vincent.
session on digital governance, reimagined youth ambitions with one vision. It's an open forum, so that's why we're trying to get the seats like this. We really want people establishing a dialogue, getting ideas going. And I'd like to thank all the members of the European Parliament for being here, all the very Osama Emirati, France, Tatifa Sival from Nepal, Murilo over there from Switzerland, Astud Youth, my colleague from Senegal, and Levi, who hopefully will be joining us. I think the Zoom is online now, so people all over the place will be joining us here. But thank you everyone for being here with us. Without further ado, I'd like to give over to the head of the European delegation, Ms. Tinkola, to have some opening remarks for us.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for having us here for this event, which is becoming a tradition. And the EU delegation meets with the EU IGF. As a kickoff, I decided to reflect a bit on our previous discussion, which was almost 6 months ago. At that point, we were trying to answer the question whether we should regulate and protect the next generation. This was the topic of debate in the same format in Riyadh in December. Of course, the answer to the question is very clear, but please do allow me to remind the audience about some of the conclusions that we've reached back then, which I'm sure is going to make our transition to today's discussions, which is the Newton mission and policy vision, very easy. So first of all, last time we've all agreed that we need to balance protection with the digital rights. From a European perspective, we put three main priorities. The first one is privacy and data protection. Second is freedom of expression and access to information. And last but not least was the digital literacy empowerment. Of course, all these priorities still do remain on the table. And we can ensure that from the perspective of the European Parliament, and of course, I'm sure other colleagues from the European Commission will support us. We are working on key legislations which do base their grounds on those three main priorities. During the discussions we had in December with the youth IGF, there were like some key takeaways. So one of the very interesting ones from your side was that globally the EU is perceived as the Silicon Valley of regulations, but somehow we do often struggle to implement them in a timely manner and to ensure that the proper information about them is provided. So we are still facing this challenge as of today. We were discussing briefly the age verification as a measure to protect minors and children in the online space. However, as much needed protection it was agreed that it's barely not enough, but it's a good step in that direction. We've also agreed that the digital economy is key and it will shrink if we don't have a common global world approach on regulations. Hence, the format and the forum of IGF is key to ensure that. We're having those discussions yesterday in our parliamentary track when we were touching upon the topic that digital rights are still not quite well understood and well defined in the global divine. We touched upon learning as a key dimension, protection of children and minors from hate and harm speech online. And of course, we did agree that there must be a balance between regulation and innovation, and the voice of the youth should be heard when we're making the regulatory framework for the future, especially in the very dynamic environment of evolving technologies, where we quite often need to update or improve our regulatory framework in order to catch up with the very dynamic technological advancement and development on that side. So from that perspective, I just wanted to highlight some of the key takeaways by noting I see that we agree on them. And let's see how we bring the conversation to the further step and ensure the youth involvement and the youth vision is taken into account in our future work, especially in this upcoming mandate of the European institutions. Thank you for the attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nicola. Now, moving on to you, representing the institution.
Yes, good morning, and very honored to represent you, the European Commission. And for those of you who don't know the EU, we have indeed the co-legislator. I think we are very honored that so many MEPs today with us. And the European Commission is the executive of the European Union, so we are kind of almost a government, you may say. My message today is essentially that we very much want to improve the role of youth in our policy. That has been an announcement that was made by our president, Ursula von der Leyen, when she was elected for the second mandate. And this is being translated very concretely in the way we now design also some of our policies. We have actually policies for young people. In fact, we have a policy called Better Internet for Kids, which is actually something where we have framed over the past years our efforts towards the youth, which is to say that there is a need for protection, but there is even more need for empowerment, because we believe that technologies, they are well designed, are fantastic opportunities for young people, and I think we just need to look around, and this is something that we experience and we see from the feedback of young people every day. But today I wanted to emphasize the role that we are trying to give to youth and to young people in the way we are designing policy. And that's something that was introduced with this commission. We have the so-called youth policy dialogues. This is a format whereby commissioners, once or at least twice a year, and Vice President Virkunen already had two since the beginning of the mandate. So the commissioners, which are basically those that are representing the commission in their various portfolios, are meeting actually young people to hear about their views, and also to have inputs about how we frame our policies. This is something we are also doing in the area of research and development. Now we have introduced new panels whereby before launching some work programs and specific areas on innovation, we try to sound also young people in these policies. And of course, we have the youth IGF, which is something that has been also supported very concretely by the European Union over the years, and it's something that we value very much, because we believe that the internet is about inclusion of all regions, but also of all sorts of individuals, including young people, especially because you are the future. And in a way, we are not designing policies for the sake of it, but to build a better future that will be inclusive, that will be open, and that will offer opportunities for growth, for jobs, and for activities. So just to conclude, I think today is a great opportunity, again, to have these direct interactions. I think we will go into some more details. But as far as the Commission is concerned, I mean, we see this year as an important step. I mean, the WISES plus 20 is really the occasion to reaffirm the key principles, the key foundation for internet governance. We need to be careful not to undermine the great achievements that we have today, but also we need to make this system, this environment future-proof, precisely because it is not just for this generation, it is for many generations to come. And in that context, I think that good governance is very much what we aim for, and that includes also the voice of the youth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Klein. I think that those two speeches are a great starting point for us, because I was talking to a lot of young people here at the conference, and they say that sometimes they feel that it's too far away, the reach of policies, and whenever, even if they have the option to ask someone individually, he still feels that it's that very bland, overarching speech about, oh, how AI or the future, and what we really try to do here is bring the discussion down to earth and go from people's realities. So I'd like to invite the youth that's here with the IGF today, because you guys are the ones that are on the ground, that you're facing a lot of these challenges that come from the technological point of view. So we're very excited to have this opportunity where you can ask questions directly and share a little bit of your practical experience as well. So if any of the youth representatives wants to take it off. Murilo, if you could just present yourself, where you come from, and then your question.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. I am Murilo Salvador. I'm from Portugal, and I'm currently representing with IGF here in 2025. And I have a lot of questions, but maybe I would just like to ask you something that's been very affecting the youth of perspectives about the future, which is obviously artificial intelligence. I was just listening to the beginning of the session there on the future of work, and there are so many things to unpack, and one of the things that I get a lot from peers is the entry-level positions, right? That are being first on the line, frontline of being replaced by these technologies. So I was wondering, in this scenario where we have a very difficult entry into the labor market after the studies, what do you think that should be done here to give people hope, of course, but also to actually help them to get into that first job that's usually the hardest thing to get.
I can volunteer because my daughter is presently trying to find the first job at the university, so I'm directly exposed to this situation. I would have two remarks to say. I think that it's really something that I've heard a lot, that there is a fear about AI among young people, not just about the risks that we are tackling through the AI Act, but precisely because of this impression, which is more than an impression. I think it's starting to be a reality in certain professions, that AI basically is replacing, as you said, maybe the entry level of jobs which are not experts yet. We see that in law firms, for instance. I was discussing with some partners who were telling me that their experience today using generative AI is that, unfortunately, in a way, the AI does a better job than probably somebody who is just new has to make research to prepare some case law, because the AI simply has more ability to be fast, be comprehensive. But at the same time, this person was telling me that even though this may be the case, first, we still need people who can ask the right prompts. So in a way, it's a new skills that you need to have, which is about how you interact with AI. I think that's what more and more young people are putting on their curriculum. How to use AI is becoming a key skills that will give you a job as well. But secondly, I think there is among employers the clear realization that you need young people for the future of your company. And even though you may not make money hiring them immediately, training them is essential for the future. I think this is something that you can still count on, that there will be opportunities because people will want to have young people coming to their company. So in a way, I would say that what we have analyzed in the Commission about the impact of AI on work is that it will have an impact, but it will not necessarily destroy jobs overall. It will change the nature of the tasks, and that means that indeed we need to be agile, not to be afraid.
That's a question back to the young man that asked this question to us. What would it be that you need yourself from your government to get your position on the job market with AA?
Yeah, this is extremely difficult for me to answer because, as we know, universities are traditionally also dealing with this situation. For them, is also changing these training programs. At least I worked in the university as a researcher too, and things do not change instantly. So I think we are in a transition period now where I cannot see a solution to this. I was hoping that you guys can have something.
Can I jump in also, and then I will pass the floor to the rest of the delegation because this is a very important topic. So first of all, in our focus of work, reskilling and lifelong learning have always been priorities. So having said that, the ask is basically to consider AI as a supplementary tool, not a substitute. Those debates and discussions have been happening in each one of the industrial revolutions back in the days. I know this is not a strong enough argument probably for this conversation, but as my colleague already re-emphasized, it's going to be new skills required, given that we have a very strong tool now. So we should not be afraid from it, but we should know how to use it to the best and develop the new skill set that's required to implement the best results. And now in the debates here, we were having a few conversations. Of course, like you need to be active in terms of asking the right questions if you want to get the correct input. But of course, the critical thinking is something which cannot be substituted by any artificial intelligence. And this is something which we need to emphasize a bit more also in our education system, and having those conversations also with a lot of labor unions across the union and a lot of the industrial associations. in terms of like how the education system at the moment should be reformed to reflect the skill sets which are required for the future working force. Taking into account that we have a tool that's gonna improve and develop our abilities, and maybe make some of the tasks we perform much faster and more efficient, but it's not gonna substitute the critical and analytical thinking, which is still unique with the human beings, as far as I'm aware. And I'm passing now to our colleagues.
Surprisingly, we agree on this topic. I wanted to say, out of my experience as a teacher at university, before I entered politics, I can give you the advice that don't only focus on being a manager of AI tools. I think everyone will learn this now, but you have certainly you will have an advantage if you learn the traditional skills like writing text, even if the AI does it better at first, but still try to learn that too. Develop that skills, and I'm sure that it is required also in the future. But of course, this is a new situation even to mankind, and all don't know the leaders, but they also focus on traditional skills, and we will, I think we have to consider this in our education context.
Can I have just please?
Let's have one.
So thank you. I guess you're absolutely right. Rescaling and resilience was and will be always something to invest in for youth. But when we see the realistic outcomes, for example, layoffs that have coming. For example, I live in France. Many layoffs, many big companies, many tech companies are laying over 10% of their effective, 15% sometimes. So I've seen some friends who transition in to multiple other fields just to rescale themselves. But also we're seeing more and more competition is going between the youth. So comparing the balance between opportunities created and the skills that we need to acquire, I guess we are not in the right balance yet.
I totally agree on this, because working as last year as a teacher, not in university, but at the level, so working with children from the age of 10 to 18, you see that they are using other things that we didn't have now. But in the end, you always have to be a human being. And that's the most important thing. You can't be replaced by a computer, you can't be replaced by anything, and especially teaching also foreign languages. That is where you can immediately see if a person is able to speak foreign language or to write in foreign language, or has it done the artificial intelligence. Because in the end, you have to focus on this. And I think that we all have to start, but not in the secondary schools, really at basic. So we have to teach in another way, maybe, and we have to prepare all our children for the future. And it's, in the end, it's always that you have skills that you can use, and you have to be prepared. And so there is the competition. It's always, but it's always weak. And the competition, I think sometimes it's also something good, because so you encourage people to learn more, to be proud of what you know, what you can. And so it's a positive way to approach also intelligence.
I want
to have one more information, but if there is something else from your side, so we can think one more.
We'll do one more and then we'll.
Okay.
No, very briefly, because I think that the majority of things have been said. On the replacement of the AI, I agree that critical thinking is needed, also for digital literacy and disinformation, by the way, that is more and more widespread online. So you need really good reason for that. plus it hasn't been mentioned yet, innovation. So I mean, for instance, in my team, of course, everybody uses AI. It helps you that you have to be able to do the prompt. But sometimes you need to have a project, where about what directions you want to take, and for that you need to have the thinking. And this is for the human beings, and not for AI. I'm not talking about things. So in your case, if you have a small company, startup, of course, you want to put usually and be able to the market. So for this, AI is an enabler. And just the last thing that I would like to add on is this technology came very fast and everybody's adapting itself only now. And we have to focus, as everybody agreed, on having the right skills for the young, but also for the seniors, for instance, or like our age as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much for the answer. And I think I just want to shift a little bit to talk about you guys are talking about starting young as well, and the importance of critical thinking. But that also requires a deep level of trust that young people need to have on the system development and on the infrastructure as well. And I feel that a lot of young people, especially, they are a bit skeptical of how that is working. So just before I go back to the young people that are here in the room, we collated a couple of realities that we work with from the youth IGF. So just to keep our conversation in the ground, we have one example here that they put together. That would be in a small village, for example, there's a school and a teacher that rely on an online platform funded by the EU to teach digital citizenship to teenagers. But one morning the system crashes because of a ransomware on the platform's cloud provider. And then everyone loses access, parents start worrying about children suddenly. And all that trust that we're trying to build slowly by educating people in classrooms, and then later on at the university level, starts to fade. So I think our question for all of you would as well be, how do we make sure that we're really putting together that trust with young people in the first place? What are the concrete steps that we're thinking about being resilient in terms of and transparent? And this is how we're trying to put together the infrastructure and policies so that we're really taking care of youth in the process. But also from the other end, now I'll give floor to us too. If you can ask from your side of the question as well, how do you see the need for trust and from their side?
Hello everyone, bonjour. Je vais parler en français. Est-ce qu'il est prêt? Non. Je vais traduire. Donc, mon collègue pourra traduire. Mon nom est Astou Diouf et je suis juriste-chercheur en droit numérique. Je fais ma thèse en coopération internationale sur la cybersécurité.
So she's doing a PhD thesis on digital law.
Donc, je travaille avec Young IGF depuis pas mal d'années. Je représente l'Afrique francophone et je me réjouis de cette réunion, de cette rencontre, de voir les parlementaires pour parler de cette thématique, de cette question. Et ma question est de savoir la stratégie que je peux utiliser pour inviter le Parlement africain ou le Parlement sénégalais à s'immiscer davantage, à encourager davantage les jeunes dans la promotion des technologies.
So she works for this NGO called Article 19, and she is asking in the area of Francophone Africa how to encourage the Senegalese parliament to encourage young people to use these technologies.
Is the question clear, or is it like a little bit more? Stu, if you can just clarify a little bit more.
Non, c'est quelle technologie numérique?
Ah bon?
Les plateformes numériques.
Oui, la plateforme.
So the digital platforms.
Yes.
So how can we promote trust in digital platforms I think that's a big question now, as you know. I suppose interpreting the question is, these platforms are not even European many times. So how can we encourage young people to use these platforms to in different contexts? He was mentioning about contexts recently. But again, I guess we can apply this to any context. I said this one is very
Maybe I can make some intervention. So, you know, we say that these digital platforms are for humans, right? So, in this case, when we are getting in touch with these digital platforms, we can not use the human approach when you meet a person and there is a sympathy or not from the first sight, right? You should know it. With the digital platforms, it is the same. You should have the knowledge about this. You should, and more than knowledge you have, more experience you have with these digital platforms, more trust you can have. At the same time, you should also understand with all this knowledge, the risks that are connected with these digital platforms. Well as with the risks when you meet with the human being. But digital platforms can ruin all your life as well as the human being. So, first of all, I would suggest to go with the knowledge, with the promotion of knowledge. And I'm just back from the plenary session where we were discussing the AI and the visual work. One of the most important things I've heard there, we should also develop talent. Because all the other things can be maybe replaced by the AI, the talent, the humanistic approach, the creativeness, and this critical thinking that you have mentioned. Again, with all these digital platforms, we should use this critical thinking. We should understand that it can be wrong. And we should just double check what, we should at least try to double check what is possible.
Yeah.
Just a small remark. I think we will never pass 100%. We cannot pass 100%. We have to deal with this mistrust and this suspicion. The digital world is a world of suspicion. And I recommend a book of a very smart philosopher, Boris, Under Suspicion, with an analogy of media. It's a bit, some like 20 years old, but still 100% actual, more than ever, with all this AI and deepfakes and so on. And we have to deal with this mistrust and this suspicion and think about it and understand why we can never trust 100%. Because if you have a trustworthy platform and you trust 100%, then you get into big trouble because you should be always be wrong. So, critical thinking. Follow up with that question.
I'll just open up to more.
Hi, so my name is Francis and I'm part of the European Youth IGF. And I wanted to say on this issue, I think it's about having a very balanced account for young people about what digital literacy should be and that we're somehow unified on digital literacy and the rollout of digital literacy. So when we were coming together to talk about specifically generative AI and its role in education, I think young people need to have a balanced view. We've been talking about this a little bit here. So you don't want to be super scared of these digital platforms and think actually that these are very, very worrying spaces and they are full of misinformation, and therefore we stay away from it. You need to develop skills, but you don't want to develop the skill set at the cost, at the opportunity cost of developing other skills. So I think this conversation we're having about it's a supplement, not a replacement, is good, but we have to realize that in schools we're teaching people a lot about AI platforms and we're giving young people in primary schools ChatGPT or these chatbots. It's at the opportunity cost in terms of time and resources to teach them to write and teach them to critically think. And if we're endorsing them in schools, what is that saying about what they do when they go home? And when they use chatbots for their emotional feelings, does that come at the opportunity cost of making friends and talking to their friends about these issues? So I think it's about what schools are endorsing and the message they're sending to the young children. And I think it's all well and good to say that in the job market and university sectors that we want critical thinkers and that this is useful. But I don't know if there's always the market incentive for this necessarily. I think a lot of the times, a lot of jobs will not actually prioritize critical thinking, writing skills, because it's just quicker and it's more effective in terms of money spent to just give it to AI. So I think that's where the European Union and actually governments need to come in. That's the role of governments to, if there's the market isn't working quite right in terms of how we want society to run, then governments come in and they say, okay, then we need to correct this because I don't think it's, I think we can agree it's not the social good that children are eroding their own social relationships, but they don't know where the source of information is coming from as well. And they don't have this critical thinking skill that we often would encourage in things like history or the social sciences, knowing we're going from taking information from a research paper, we're taking information that's been published and peer reviewed, as opposed to just relying on this chatbot where you don't know how the algorithm has given this information.
So I think if you drop all that in a question for them,
yes, okay.
What would you like some clarity on the steps that they're taking to try to get to that?
So I guess the question then is, how can the European Union envision a digital service that recommends to European governments to roll out so that we have a balanced notion of these resources and these tools, so that children aren't over-reliant on it at home and in schools, but are able to use it as a tool, as well as not giving up those writing skills. Because, for example, exams now, are they all going to be online? Are they all going to be written documents that you can run through ChatGPT, or are we going to sit young people in halls and make them write out things like this? I would like to know your opinion on this.
Thank you very much. Pass on the word to you guys.
For me, because you know, for the schools, that this should be the critical of schools and higher level as well. That also I have a delegation that supported the beginning and myself also, you know, on how to improve the digital skills, you know, speaking in general, digital literacy, AI literacy as well, because we are talking about it. And just one thing, and add on, it's not just, you know, that we would like to go for critical thinking because it's good for the market. It's you know, for your own sake, you know, to orient yourself in the world, because of course there's a lot of disinformation, and then you have to really be able to check it. It's not just for the fact checkers, but also for, you know, your own sake. So it has an additional twist and an additional importance compared to just, you know, be sellable and marketable. Yeah. And I'm just also no, and on trust. I think it has been said that, you know, how important is the communication, the transparency of the platforms, for instance, how they operate, what kind of risk, you know, you are exposed to. And also the other aspect of trust is the verification. So what are the rules around these platforms that you control? We have BSA, the DNA, you are aware of the commission, which states they initiated proceedings against the platforms. They have to comply with different obligations as to, for instance, providing data to researchers in order to see, for instance, how the algorithms work, because there is not real transparency for the time being. For instance, why a polarizing content is pushed, you know, more on the platform compared to a more moderated one, and we have to see the trends, and this should be public, and this belongs, you know, again to the understanding how these platforms work. And if you have the knowledge, you feel more comfortable, you know, with using, you know, their services.
Sorry, it's I try to answer this also in a way more joke at the beginning. Come to Germany, everything will happen digitally 20 years later in other member states. So, secondly, rely on the European Union. As far as what I can see, if we are seeing the Chinese or the US model, this is not, from my point of view, linked to values anymore. So if you are value orientated, this is what the European Union is trying to do in linking values with technology. Sometimes we are exaggerating this, sometimes it might be not enough, but this is a kind of a way forward. But at the end, for young people, you need to embrace the new technology. This will stay and this will be developed, and you need to handle this somehow, to manage this somehow. So that's why you need your own competence also in design. So meaning using large language models, but be critical with the outcome. It will probably be developed better in the future, but coming to trust, in these cases, I would say you need your own abilities trained on all of these and make your own decisions somehow. So political levels of scenery will change, and sometimes there are different approaches in place, and it's quite critical already. But still, I would say from my personal point of view, I would say we are on the right track with the European Union in trying to combine this. But if you're looking to other places in the world, they are not even have values still in mind. And this is where I would like to see you more critical on all these developments. Of course, probably you can't trust what you're reading, what you're hearing, and what you're seeing any longer because of the AI development. And that's why you need this ability in detecting something that might be fake or something like this. So that's why I would say building trust is really something where you have this balance between some value orientation and also embracing the new developments, but deeply.
If I can just add also that, I mean, first of all, you should realize that, especially in the EU, even though the perception sometimes from the youth is that the situation is a bit dire, if you look in the longer historical perspective, when youth unemployment is at historical lows, you're not like in African countries exposed to war or to very difficult deprivation and so on. Even though there may be indeed risks online, this is something that we are all learning by doing, and I think that there is adjustment in the making in schools. Now, for instance, some schools are not allowing any more mobile phones in classrooms and so on. I think that there is a collective learning process to indeed make the technology a useful tool, but not something that is creating danger or that is abused in the bad sense. So I think that all together we can build the situation that is not actually as bad maybe as you may feel. And again, I think that historically, when I look at CVs from young people, I mean, it's amazing. You know, you have young people today in Europe, they have traveled, they have been, they speak languages, they have had many educations and so on. You are really fantastic, fantastically equipped already to face the world. And in addition, at EU level, we are doing a lot of things. First, on cybersecurity, so there are initiatives to on ransomware. We are doing things. We have now so-called security operations centers. We have a cybersecurity agency. We have a cyber reserve that is precisely trying to organize that we deal with this cyber incident, that we can actually address them, reply to them. We have the Network and Information Security Directive that obliges all the critical infrastructures to have this risk management against cyber risk. So I mean, I think we are trying to equip society against those risks. And against platform, there is indeed, as was mentioned, the Digital Services Act that is really very concrete, very effective in obliging also the platforms to take responsibility for the content, for the protection of minors and young people. And I think that's something that where we are making progress. And finally, I think that also I didn't mention in my previous intervention, but on skills, a lot is happening. I mean, as part of our action plan on the AI continent, we have a whole chapter there also on skills for AI, skills for the future, and there is also the skills action plan that the EU is now deploying, which involves all levels, also the member states, the regions, and this is about really improving the way we use education, but also making sure that it's fit for purpose for the future. So overall, I would not be so pessimistic because I think that things are not that bad, especially if we take the risks and the challenges into our hands.
Maybe just add something here to clarify, because I feel like in this conversation we might be missing this very important point, because I understood your ask at the beginning in a certain direction. Please keep in mind that education is prerogative of the member states. The EU does not have the power to intervene in legislations about the education and the education system. That's why we're speaking about long life learning, reskilling, everything that was already mentioned by the Commission, because the governments in each one of the member states are independent in the way they shape the education system to be reflecting on the new needs of the digital economy that we are building, or like the new technical skills required to be using tools as AI in the most efficient manner. However, our role as parliamentarians could be to push our governments in each one of the respective member states to be more proactive, but there cannot be a common EU policy on education about those matters. That's why we're speaking about skill developments, and we're trying to be very vocal on the new skill set requirements. This is something which we need to be very clear about in those conversations, because if we miss that point, we might have unrealistic expectations. And that reminds me actually that the role of the young people and the civil societies is also quite, and NGOs of course, it's quite important in this process, because we're pushing from the EU Parliament's perspective, but of course the governments in each one of the member states are quite independent when it comes to those policies.
I think my point was really, how can we have a more unified EU idea? It doesn't have to be a policy, and I'm very aware of how legislation works, but if the EU has a conception of what they think is useful, and I think it's just, as you said, it's about society, right? What are our societal values and what are the EU values? And I think the assertion of EU values is very important right now, and it's very important to young people. So I think if the EU comes together to think about how we can balance this, and then talk to various governments, and those governments obviously can decide themselves if they want to take, and want to be part of a meaningful digital rollout of literacy.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Dekova, for the clarification as well. Now, I would just like to open the floor to, we're on our last 15 minutes of the session, so if you have anything to ask, go ahead. You're the first one in line. Yeah, I just want to ask, Levi, if you are curating online questions as well, if you could send them through the chat, we'll have a look, as well as what a compliment all the young people just got, from the European Commission and from the members of Parliament. So I just want to say, we are here and we are equipped. We have what it takes, at least the drive and the energy to make change. So that's very exciting, at least to hear. But yeah, I will open the floor now to questions from industry as well and young people. You go ahead first, Miss. Okay, yeah.
Okay, hello everyone. It's me, Sadiqa Silva, Internet Society Youth Ambassador for 2025. I am a licensed advocate and human rights activist based in Kathmandu, Nepal, and I am little wondering about the conversation going on here in Rome. Well, the global south like Nepal is still struggling with the basic digital infrastructure, reliable internet connections, and the global conversation is about the making a strategic move for the trustworthy internet, and we are still struggling hard to have that internet connection. So that thing there, and I have one question to ask, that Nepal is in process of making the various law and policy regarding internet, regulating social media, including social media bill, information technology and cybersecurity bill. And from our experience, what we have learned is that the regulating internet, regulating digital space is very tricky thing to do. A little bit of negligence will turn into under regulations, and a bit more regulation will be a more controlling. And from the Nepal's draft bill, what we have seen is government is up to making it more controlling, more restrictive in terms of freedom of expression, right to privacy. So as a youth, we want to involve in that policy making. We want to set the policy as we want to make it more trustworthy, more reliable, more transparent. And we as a youth leader of Nepal look up to the European Union laws on safety, on data protection. So what is the one recommendation that you want to give to youth leader like me to involve or to engage in a policy making that will make the internet more reliable, trustworthy, and open for all? So that's my question to all the EU delegates.
But here in the EU, with cooperation, so cooperation it's important, within the EU. I mean, the youth as well. We have not mentioned at the beginning, but also the Parliament. We had just last week the Youth season, where there were workshops and several thousands of visitors, and it was like a very open discussion around different policy areas. But I think it's very much, the willingness of the legislator, to have discussions with youth. And from my own experience, since I established a task force in a certain field, it's research and innovation, but I'm consulting the stakeholders because, of course, you want to know what is happening on the ground, what is they can do in order to make up your mind and what you are going to propose then as legislation. So you have to be in that mood and willingness to engage with the stakeholders and most of course the young generation. And of course, if you are targeted by the legislation, it is something that does make sense if you want to have a good outcome. So, and we have also, of course, in the Parliament, the lobbyist stakeholder interest groups that they come to us. We are in discussions with them, with industry representatives, and this person very transparent way. We have our rules for that. But of course, I will knock at the door. I don't know exact situation. May I just add something here? I mean, from my experience, is sometimes when there is a difficulty to reach out to government or to get them to follow your way of thinking, your proposals, I would say try to focus on not posing the problem, but offering a solution. Because like by being here, you have exposure actually to a lot of those legislations that we're discussing that are already working at in many countries in Europe and not only in Europe. So if you ask specifically what should you do, like as was already mentioned, like a workforce, create a proper analysis of some of the legislations that are missing in the policy you mentioned, for instance, and prepare kind of a specific proposal based on experience in other countries or legislation that's already been proven to work in other parts of the world. So when you're approaching a government or a legislator with a solution rather than a problem, conversation really makes a difference. I mean, this is just a very specific and practical example.
May I just add a bit to that? Well, I'm from RIPE, and CC is the original internet registry that also supports internet initiatives. All our servers, sorry, but I'm in people also supporting some who are in the Central Asia, Caucasus, Eastern Europe, and part of our service project. So, and I was really pleased to hear from your speech that, okay, we have also some internet connectivity issues. And when we talk about the development of AI, future of work, the transnational regulations, sometimes we forget about the need of these mountainous regions of these people working in villages. And when these national regional IGFs are going there and they are starting discussing the future of AI, and we engage people from villages and they say, guys, we don't have a normal internet. We don't have a quality of services in our schools. What are we talking about? We cannot think about AI when we don't have the internet. So it is very important for all of you coming to IGFs, global IGFs, regional IGFs, to come with your national background, with your national understanding of what is very important for your country, not for Europe, but for Nepal, for Central Asia, for Caucasus, for Germany itself. Because even the Germany is in EU, but they have also their own issues that should.
And I'll just go grab a final question there before we end. Two final questions, so those two guys were waiting. So you go, guys, you go ahead. Yeah.
Samino Timano, especially from Malawi, and he has been from us. So mine is more of a comment and recommendation and my understanding of what is taking place in resilience. Basically, what I feel and what I believe is that when we talk about it, having the confidence that the system will work normal person is taking place. First of all, my privacy, my security, and also we are building by the system is available if I need it. So taking you back to the basics of the fundamental principles of cybersecurity, CIA, for example, confidentiality, make sure that the data, my data is being protected, and only me can access the data. And also integrity, whereby my data that's being stored on the system will back from something important and modified. And also, when I'm going to make sure that the data that I own the data, and I can access it every time I need it. So taking it back, and also on digital policy, I believe, I feel like we need to introduce more of this policy carefully so that more can be involved in making of digital policy and analysis, as well as introducing forces in digital policy, such as AI, privacy, as well as digital. For example, I remember when I previously participated in a hackathon, which is doing digital policy to give you a scenario, for example, if everyone has been hacked, what do you do? So we have to analyze the policy and develop solutions around that.
Thank you very much. I'll throw back to them. Just a very short question.
Yes, it's very short. So I'm gonna talk about a frequently used buzzword in academia and also policy called digital sovereignty. And I just wanted to ask, because I saw it's also on the list of topics, I just wanted to ask, because I understand the rationale behind digital sovereignty and strategic autonomy, but I think it's a fine line between strategic autonomy and also kind of like contributing to the fragmentation of the internet. So I just wanted to ask, how can we balance digital sovereignty and an open and global free internet?
Very good question. Yeah.
So maybe we can do one on sovereignty because it's very much different portfolio. I mean, again, you know, the term is not very always ideal because in different languages, in different culture, it has different meanings. In the parliament, the sovereignty is very much on the far right of power, and it's not necessarily the view in other countries. What I can tell you is that if you just rely on a few providers of technology, you are basically dependent. What it means is that you may not have more trust because sometimes the choice is very simple. It's like you say yes, or you have no service to accepting the terms and conditions. And the best way for individuals, for consumers to have a voice is sometimes to have choice, to have alternatives. And I think sovereignty very often is just about this. It's about making sure that you are free, because you can have your own choice, your own ability to say no, to choose actually the different solution. So in the EU, I think we've been experiencing this quite crudely because during the COVID pandemic, suddenly we realized we miss basic goods. We were not able to find what we need. And today we are exposed to a situation where we have maybe on the other side of the Atlantic the impression that somebody could switch off some of the services we are using every day. So this, of course, raises big questions, and I think it's an agenda we share, in fact, with countries in Africa, in Latin America, and so on, which is how you develop your own capabilities. Doesn't mean that you don't buy from others, but it means that at least you create a choice because you have also your own resources. That's something we are very much supporting. I mean, Birkunen was here yesterday. She outlined a little bit what we do. Currently, we are promoting a lot of efforts in open source, and this is something that is actually at the heart of the internet. That's how the internet was born. It's about actually doing your own technology yourself because you have the skills and you can also develop it. In Europe, now we are actually more developers than in the United States. We are very vibrant open source community. And now our hope is that we can actually mobilize them to create these alternative products so that they won't be 100% of the market, but it will be something which is good enough to replace here and there, elements. It's happening in the cloud domain where we are already providers, but we need to develop these capabilities further and to join forces. I think that's also an important message. Very often the problem is that you have very large companies, the largest companies in the world. They have all the means to do marketing to convince you that only them are very secure. Actually, it's not true. You have very good solutions in terms of technology coming from smaller companies. It's just that they need a chance. And what we are contemplating now is to give them a chance also to public procurement, because actually governments can also be helpful there in creating this market. So in essence, sovereignty, I don't think should be seen as a strong word in itself. It is not a doctrine. It is a necessity to be able to have freedom of choice and also to make sure that your future is in your hands.
In my opinion, it should be the people's sovereignty, right? It should be the people's sovereignty of their own data, not only in Europe, but globally. So maybe this can shift the term sovereignty a bit from the political meaning of it.
Oh, thank you very much, guys. I just want to thank you all for being here. Respect to people's time, but thank you to the EU delegation and also to the representatives here of the Commission. So it was a pleasure here. We host that IGF. Feel free to reach out to us. Want to learn more about the skilling programs or someone and all the different things. It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.